Hello, I'm W.T. Edmondson and welcome to Focus. Freedom often causes unbelievable silence. Well, with the situation that is carrying all over the country, we wanted to talk with law enforcement, and so we have with us Lieutenant David Williams, and he is with the Jefferson City Police Department. As I said, with all that has been going on since the situation there in Ferguson back in August of 2014, police are being called into accountability. There's a situation with people calling for body cameras, and citizens are recording police in action. And so we wanted to talk with law enforcement to get an assessment as to what's going on and how can some of these things be dealt with. But before I do go any further, I would first thank you for accepting the invitation, and also please extend thanks to your mother. She tracked you down for me. And of course, thanks to Chief Schrader for giving his authorization for you to come on. We really appreciate that. So getting into it, first off, of course, tell us, who is David Williams?
Well, I am a 22-year police officer. Although my rank says that I'm a lieutenant, I'm still a police officer, because unlike a lot of situations people see themselves, I started out as an officer and I consider myself still to be a police officer, just in a supervisory role at this time. Not originally from Central Missouri. I came here for the job after playing sports in high school and college, transitioned into law enforcement, attended the Law Enforcement Training Institute in Columbia several years ago, had a part-time job before that in the narcotics arena, left there and came to the police department in 1993, and I've been here ever since.
What other kind of training have you had?
I have been very privileged to be able to go to some very good training over the years. Since we are a smaller department, we like to refer to ourselves as wearing many hats. Over my career, I've been a narcotics officer, I've been a traffic officer, which investigated accidents. So I've been to motor school. I'm a certified motorcycle operator, which is different than just riding your motorcycle around town and seeing the sights. I have been a SWAT operator. I was a SWAT team leader, and at the conclusion, I was the SWAT commander for the entire police department. I've also had the privilege of going to Quantico, Virginia for the FBI National Academy. Only 1% of the top 10% of law enforcement are invited. I was very privileged to attend there. I'm currently the president of our organization for Western Missouri and the whole state of Kansas. I was also given an opportunity to go to the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms headquarters in Washington, D.C., where I did a fellowship. So I've done a lot of things. The goal for all that is to make myself a better police officer and in turn make our department better. I've been able to bring back a lot of things to Central Missouri that we don't normally have the opportunity for, and we've been able to share a lot of those investigative ideas and tools here at Community Local.
That's great. Tell them, what is the most difficult part about being a police officer? And before you answer that, before deciding to go into law enforcement, tell us about the assessment that you made prior to making that decision.
Probably the first assessment that I made was with my family. Like most, I value what my family thinks about what I do, how I do it, because there's still a part of me that wants to make that name proud, that family proud. As you mentioned, my mother is here locally. You interact with her quite a bit. And so you know that that's one of the things that we all want, that approval factor. And that was one of the things that I looked at first. I thought about the military first, having had a military background with the family. But that was something that a lot of my other family members had done, and I wanted to do something different. I got my education, finished that, and it was just one of those situations where I wanted to do something I talked to a lot of my friends, had some close friends who were in law enforcement at the time, who explained to me how special it was to be able to call yourself a law enforcement person. And so I did a little research and made the decision. I put myself through the academy. My first certification at LETI, I actually paid for myself, which according to my boss, that showed that I had the desire, because a lot of time people want someone else to put you through things and give you that training before you decide whether or not that's something you want to do.
What in your life led you to that?
I think it would probably have to be more about growing up. My grandparents, a large part of my life, one of the things that I've tried to in turn do for my children, make their grandparents a big part of their life, because I think one of the problems we have is that we don't have the structure there, and there is a lot of that I see now, because the younger generation now are missing out on having that family structure that they need to make them better people. And so my grandparents, both sides, were able to make sure I understood the difference between right and wrong, not just when someone was looking right or wrong. I wanted to be able to make a difference, and so it's an old adage that people say all the time, I want to be there to help people. Not so much to help people, but to help them do the right thing. And so that's where I started with whether it be military or law enforcement, I wanted something in order to be able to prove that I was making a difference.
As a rookie officer, what was your biggest surprise once you got out on the job?
Probably the biggest surprise was the lack of respect that people gave to what we were trying to do. I think it boils down to most people that interact with the police are not doing so because something good has happened. A lot of times people interact and they think automatically that we're there because someone has to go to jail or someone has to be forced to do something that they don't want to do. So I saw that when we interacted with the people, the immediate thing was they turned on us instead of allowing us to be there to help. And that was probably the biggest thing I saw as a rookie officer. Even before I was out on my own, even in my field training program, I was able to see that, because those were the situations we were put into, whether it be an accident, whether it be a domestic violence situation, whether it be a simple stealing something from a local store. We were brought in because something had happened, and we were that person trying to make a decision whether or not their rights were taken from them and they were taken into custody.
So is that one of the reasons why you're hearing more and more about citizen policing and getting out among the people more?
I think it's always been, even back in the beginning of how law enforcement came to be, the cops, constables on patrol. I think that was something that we've always done. It just went away from that. Citizen policing has been around since the beginning. It's just gone through different stages and different morphs of whether or not they want to be included. Now for a citizen to call and tell us something, if the wrong person finds out that citizen has shared information with us, they get a bad name and a bad label because they're trying to make their community better by pointing out the things that they don't want to be going on. And so what we've done is we've taken the power from the people that really want our help and given it to the people that are causing the problem to start with.
What do you like most about being a police officer, and what do you like least about being a police officer?
Well, as I said, I've been here for over 22 years, so I've seen a couple different likes and a couple different dislikes. In the beginning, I liked the fact that I was able to be physical. I was able to get out of my car. You know, I like the foot chases. I like the driving fast. At one point, I've been a driving instructor because I like that excitement level. I've turned into an instructor now, so I teach a lot of different things for the Sheriff's Academy, for Law Enforcement Training Institute, and for the Highway Patrol as well. We have found that we need to have good people teaching good people, and that continues to cycle. Probably one of the things I disliked the most about my job was contacting family with really bad news. Probably still one of the things that I have the biggest problem with over the years. When I was an accident investigator, I had to make some very, very difficult death notifications. Probably still some of the most disliking things that I've encountered in my career. The people are always going to change. You have good people, you deal with bad people, and you just have to be able to determine where they're going to fit in that category.
How do you keep from becoming jaded?
I think I keep from becoming jaded because I'm well grounded. I think that I understand. I have a large family, and not everyone in my family are angels. I've never been to the point where I thought that I was better than anyone else. Anytime I need to be brought back to reality, I just call some of my family or go visit some of my family. And I understand that it is not just about me. And so it really helps me keep a firm outlook on things.
Jefferson City Police Department appear to be a well-respected professional organization. What do you attribute that to?
I definitely say it's because we have good people working there. Whether or not you can say that we're better than any other department, I would put us in the tops. I've had the privilege of being all over the country and all over the world, actually. I have friends that police in other countries. And I would put us up against anybody. I think that is because we have a group of people that aren't all specialists in one thing. They are specialists in a lot of things. And so if we have something that one person can't handle, we're small enough but big enough to where we have someone probably skilled in that set to where we could get them there to help.
As we transition here a minute, the Attorney General's office each year puts out a racial profiling report.
Yes.
For some time, when you hear racial profiling, people, kind of snickered and said, yeah, sure. But it has been proven that racial profiling does in fact take place. It is real. What does your training teach you, and what really happens once you're out on the road doing your profession? What happens?
Well, I think the first angle that you have to look at is profiling does occur. There are different types of profiling. Some are good and some we've proven are bad. The problem that I see personally, not speaking for the department or anything else, but personally, I don't believe that profiling occurs on the same level that people give it credit for, because a traffic stop, for instance, most traffic stops that occur, the officer doesn't know who they're encountering until they've already made their approach, unless it's a situation where they've met that car and they've seen the operator. And at that point, it's not profiling. If they recognize that person from prior contact, it's no longer a profiling situation. It is I know exactly who that is, and I'm stopping them for this reason or that reason. So the normal traffic stop, you don't know. It's a good system to report. The problem is the information is jaded in itself. I'll use our community as an example. The way we have our city divided up, our officers rotate through various regions. We call them beat assignments, zones. So an officer may work at the mall on Monday and Tuesday of their work week, and they get moved to the south part of the town later. The makeup of those two regions of Jefferson City are going to be totally different. And if that officer is an aggressive officer who makes, we'll say, 10 traffic stops in one day, if he makes 10 traffic stops near the mall, the chances of him encountering a minority are less just based on the demographics of that area. Where you turn into the south part of town, you have the high school, you have the hospital, you have US 54. Someone could be going through town. So yes, it exists. Do we talk about it? Yes. It is something that not just reporting it to the Attorney General, we talk about it as a department, because what we don't want is we don't want that person, because we can't afford to have that person. We have a good relationship with the community and we want to keep it that way. So if there is a problem person that we don't know about, by all means, we want to get that person identified and see if it's something that we can control by their assignments, or if it's something where they need to be controlled by no longer being a member of our department.
With schools starting up again, Lincoln University here, what do you say to college students, especially those individuals who are coming from large metropolitan areas, who come to little small Jefferson City and think that, you know, law enforcement, they don't know what's going on here, you know. What do you say to college students who may have that idea about law enforcement here in Jefferson City?
Well, I would say the first thing I would recommend to anyone coming to Jeff City, whether it be a student, be visiting some event here, whatever the situation is, I would say first and foremost, the easiest way to avoid contact is to don't do anything against the rules. That can go anywhere from, I've spoke at the panel here at Lincoln University before, simple things like license plates. We have expirations for a reason. Make sure everything that you are doing is within the realms of acceptability. If you're driving in a car that has 2-month-old expiration on it, expect to meet a member of the Jefferson City Police Department. If you're driving around in something that is not acceptable by standards of the state of Missouri, a muffler's hanging underneath it, the wheels are rattling off of it, those are things that we have the luxury of. We have enough people working and we care about all the other people driving on the roads to where we are going to stop those vehicles. And I guess I would say for people coming from other larger communities, we don't do things like Chicago, St. Louis, you know, Kansas City. We have the luxury of, we are able to look at things in a manner that those other departments may not have the time, manpower, or the desire to handle. It is important to us to stop speeders on Dunklin Street. It is important to us to stop speeders on US 54. And so for us, we look at things that some other larger departments may not consider to be high on their list, but here in Jefferson City they are, because our community has told us that that's what they care about. You know, we have people that go to our businesses and shoplift, and in certain communities shoplifting is not a big deal. I'll tell you that we get more surprise factors from people when they realize that stealing in Jefferson City means going to jail, compared to, oh, well, back home we just get a ticket and, or, you know, we're released from the scene. And that's not how we do things here in Jefferson City. Now, we don't take everyone to jail for every single thing. By no means would I say that. But we do for more of the things that other agencies don't.
Yeah. Thinking about the fact that there is, and there always will be, allegations of police harassment and brutality. How do you go about, as an officer, your daily routine, knowing that that opportunity always exists for that allegation to be waged? And how do you, as a supervisor, instruct your officers?
Well, the first thing I instruct any officer, whether they work directly for me or whether they work for another supervisor in the department, is that you treat people with respect, and then that cuts you out of the loop of complaint. Now, I will tell you that people will complain about things that the average person will not consider to be of complaint material. We have an office that's dedicated to simply taking complaints. Professional standards officer, he has training responsibilities too, but his primary responsibility is to take complaints. If someone feels like they've been wronged, by all means. The time to argue is not the time to argue with the officer on the scene. Time not to argue with the supervisor on the scene. There are things in place to where you can voice your opinion. I mean, the website, the phone. If you call and say, I don't believe that that was handled in a way that it should have been, by all means, there's a packet. We're open 24 hours a day. If someone wants to make a complaint, they can come in at any time to the police department and get a packet of what the allegation is. If they don't feel comfortable coming in that night, they can come in the next day. What we don't want is for people to wait 6 months and then come in and say, on that one traffic stop that I was treated terrible, because we investigate everything, and so that gives us puts us at a disadvantage to where we can't go back and get that information. Because by no means am I saying that our guys are always right. It's the perception of what happened and how you felt at the time that it happened. If you feel like you didn't do whatever allegation the officer said, whether it be a stop sign, a license plate, or whatever it is, the time to argue it is not there. But if you feel like that's not correct, we want to know. Because again, it goes back to, if we have someone that's not doing what they're supposed to be doing and it's affecting the entire department, we want to know.
That appears to be a disconnect. It appears that maybe not enough people understand that process, that while they're in the heat of an engagement with the law enforcement on the street, that there's an opportunity to complain later.
Right. And the only thing I can say to help with that is to try to educate people more about how the process works. I'm gonna give ourselves a way out here. We have programs in place at the police department that offer the opportunity for citizens to come in. We have a Citizens Police Academy. We have a Citizens Ride-Along program. We have strictly, if you want to tell us what you think is right or wrong, we have a Facebook page, we have a Twitter account. All those avenues are out there for people to be able to tell us what they think. The complaint side of it, the officer's going to feel that they're right, the person's going to feel they're right, and if they're not anywhere close to an agreement, that situation's never going to get any better. And the worst thing that's going to happen is the person with the power of arrest is going to win out in that particular occasion. May not be the right situation for what's going on, but that's what's going to happen. And we want to eliminate that. There's nothing that we can do to make it right then and there. But somebody has to take a step back and allow us to come in as supervisors, as the chief, and say, this is what should have happened. It didn't. This is how we're going to learn from that. This is how we're going to educate our people to work better at the next time.
How important is ensuring that a department has a diverse staff? How important do you feel that is in any law enforcement agency, not only law enforcement, but in any operation, but we're talking about law enforcement right now?
I think it's very important. Don't get me wrong, I am a minority, so I feel like I don't have all the answers, but I have a better perspective on it. And I will tell you that as a department, we try very hard to raise those numbers up compared to other departments. I will tell you that it will never be acceptable to everyone. Compared to policing back in the 80s and the 90s, when I first started, in the early 90s, the ability to talk to groups of other minority orientation has changed. Now we're to the point now to where you really can't ask someone what their heritage is. And so you can't say that you have someone that can speak to them directly when you don't know what their background is, because we have such a diverse community across the state, across the country. You can't just say, well, you appear to be black. That offends people in and of itself. You tell someone, you look like you're from Africa. Well, if they're not from Africa, you've already offended them and put them on the defense to where the next thing you say is going to have to be real good, or they're already tuning you out. So as a department, I think we have a diverse group. Could it be better? Of course it could be better. Could it be worse? Yes, it could be worse as well. We have female officers, we have black officers, we have officers who speak Spanish, we have officers who speak Spanish better than others. Are we ever going to have everything we need? No, we don't have any American Indians. We're close to Oklahoma. If someone were to drive through from the state of Oklahoma and they're tribal and they actually feel like they need to speak to an American Indian officer, we can't provide that for them. But I would safely say that not many departments in the state of Missouri can do that. State of Oklahoma, that's prevalent in almost every department because that is the makeup that they need in their state. So it does need to be done. Are we working toward it? Yes. I think the chief is doing what he can based on what's available. I will tell you that I'm a firm believer that we shouldn't hire people just to fill a quota of minorities. I want good people. If it means that the next person on the promotional list for officer is not what everybody else thinks we need right then, I'd rather have that person and have a good officer than to hire a Hispanic, a black, or a female just so we can check that box, because that's not doing the community that I live in any good. And this is my community right now as well. So,
law enforcement has been under the spotlight for some time. Thinking about what is going on, how do you see law enforcement and the community coming together on some common ground when it comes to the allegation of extreme force, harassment, and so forth? How do you see the two coming together?
I think an open dialogue is probably the first step in any situation. With the NAACP locally, we have a good relationship as a department. I feel like we have a good relationship on an individual basis, and part of that is because we talk. I will tell you that nothing's ever going to be perfect, but the first step in not having a excessive force situation is for force not to have to be used. And the only way that can be done is by compliance. If you don't believe you should go to jail, there are ways for you to keep from going to jail. What you've done to put yourself in positions, whether or not it be that you're with someone that you don't have enough background on and you're in a car and they have a weapon or they have drugs or they've been drinking, something to where a interaction is taking place with law enforcement and then they don't comply, that puts the need for a level of force back in. Because we don't make traffic stops with the sole goal of assaulting someone. We don't want to be assaulted either. And so if you get to the point where compliance is there is no reason for force to be used at all. If I say you're under arrest and you say, I don't believe I should be, and I try to explain to you that this is not the time to argue that point, that I believe I have enough to place you under arrest, you need to figure out a better time and a place to argue whether or not you should have been arrested. Now, I'm not saying that the officer is always right and that the situation should be that you should just comply just haphazardly. Okay, I'll go. That's not what I'm saying either, but most people have put themselves in positions to where they have an idea of something going to come out of that. As far as getting to the level of deadly force, I don't know of any police officer that I've worked with, encountered, or even spoken to that has any desire to take a life from someone. I wouldn't want to be around someone like that. I've been in some shoot situations. It doesn't make you feel better at the end of the day. It's not something that I think anyone wants to have to happen. But at the same time, I believe that you have to be prepared to do that so that the grieving family is not yours.
There is this magic thing that's being talked about in law enforcement, body cameras. Is it the magic one?
No. I have done a lot of research. One of the assignments for me at the police department is I'm the defensive tactics coordinator, and I'm in charge of our program for TASER and for cameras as well. And I've done a lot of research, and I will tell you that there is no magic bullet that's going to solve the problem, because every camera is going to have a different perspective, whether it be on the end of a TASER, only getting part of the encounter, whether it be on the lapel and being blocked accidentally, whether it be on your eyes. No camera is going to get everything that occurred the way it occurred. The only thing we can do that is humans, and we can't even recall things exactly the way they occurred. I think that cameras will help, but by no means will they show everything that needs to be shown. There still has to be some common sense placement of people in situations that go bad.
What is your position on citizens' use of cell phones recording law enforcement as they engage other citizens?
I don't have a problem with it because the society we live in has gone to everyone. I mean, you can't buy anything now that doesn't have some camera feature in it. I think that for someone to think that they're not being recorded at some point in their everyday activities once they leave their home, and even in some of their homes, you know, you have security cameras that are recording when you don't even know they're recording. Once you step out of your house, they're there. So for us to encounter someone on a traffic stop and they're recording it, I don't think that puts us in a position where we should act any differently. The difference is if you place yourself in a position trying to get that footage that is in violation of some law or some act, then that's different because that's going to result in you most likely going to jail as well.
What do you say to fellow policemen, law enforcement officers, as to why a large number of blacks don't trust police? Where did that come from?
I think it came from society's view, and that could be by the media, it could be by television shows, it could be by the upbringing, because as we said earlier in our conversation, I had a very good, strong base when I was growing up. I don't believe that a lot of our youth have that right now. And I think in turn, whether it be a strong mother, a strong father, strong grandparent, when they don't have that, they have to resort to other sources to give them what they think is right and what's wrong. And if they are in an environment where they don't have someone to tell them that everybody's good until they prove you wrong, they are going to listen to the people that are around them telling them that the police are bad. The police are only here to do bad things to you. Don't trust the police because they're only going to do bad things to you. And so that creates a mindset of the police are bad. I can remember going in stores and people, if you're not good, that police officer is going to take you to jail. I try to correct mindsets like that because that's not what we want. DARE programs, as school resource officers, we want people to understand that we're there to help, but sometimes we have to come in a bad situation. And that's to help someone too, because whether it's the victim or it's a neighbor that heard and called, when we go places, it's because we most likely have been called there. There's not a lot of things we do that we just drive around looking forward to do. Traffic violations are some of them, but for the most part, when we go places, it's because someone has alerted us to something that we need to go and investigate. And so we have been in turn made the bad guy, not so much that we don't deserve it sometimes, but we don't deserve it all the times that it occurs. And so our young people don't have someone in the background telling them that's not really how it goes.
Closing. There is a need for more minorities within law enforcement. What do you say to individuals, as I'm sure you've gone out recruiting and so forth, what do you say to young people about the benefits of law enforcement?
I think it is a wonderful profession. I think there is still a need for our profession. I would just caution anyone that wants to be in law enforcement to make sure that that's what they want and not just trying to get a job. What we don't like is we don't like people that don't truly want to be in law enforcement wearing that suit, because those are the people that are not going to treat that person with the respect they deserve because they really don't care one way or the other. What I tell people now, and as I said, I teach now, I want to make the best police officer I can right now, because one day that may be the officer that I call for help after I retire. I tell officers right now, it is like it used to be. Treat that person like you would want someone to treat your mother or your father or whoever that love source is in your life. You don't want someone to be mean to the person that may be special to you because they don't know. And so I want to make sure that the next generation of law enforcement is better than we were. Technology has already made that a possibility, but the mindset I want to make sure they have in order to be the best they can be, because it is a different world than when I started 23 years ago.
Lieutenant Williams? Thank you very much.
Thank you for the invitation.
Okay. Well, thank you for tuning in. We hope you have gotten a little bit of an insight in the minds of an individual who decided to go into law enforcement and what happens once you're in law enforcement and perceptions about law enforcement as well. We'll see you next time. God bless.